Now, we have a wonderful subject and we have a wonderful speaker. Our speaker today is a assistant minister with the Global Truth Center and former board member over there. He was ordained in February, but his ceremony is coming up. I'm not sure how we can keep it so far apart, but that's part of the Science of Mind philosophy. We're constantly celebrating, constantly celebrating. He has, and I see his posts every once in a while on the ministry website, and he's a very sensitive, aware, alert, talented kind of guy. I've been a practitioner for many years, very active in his center. He's got another title, it's arts minister, but I'm not sure what that means, so maybe he'll tell you about that in a little bit. I'd like you now to welcome Jay Willick with Walking Backwards in Heels. Now that's Walking Backwards with Heels, the Reverend Jay Willick.
I feel like I should sing a song. I'm holding a mic like this. Let me get my electronics up to speed here. Oh, so you want to hear about what the arts minister is. So as the arts minister, at our center, we produce theatrical events and musical events. And when we do that, then I have to do all the work. Or if we show movies, occasionally we'll show movies that are very spiritual in nature, and I have to get that all put together. So that's what I do as the arts minister. And like John said, I'm also the assistant minister, and in February at our annual convention, I was ordained, or given the title of being an ordained minister, and my ceremony is in a couple of weeks. So, you have to time that out with who's available and all this kind of stuff. So it took a few months, and that's okay, because they can't take that away from me. So thank you for having me be here. It's great to be here. I've been here before, sitting out there, not standing up here, and I've gone to a few of your banquets over the years. So I'm not totally unfamiliar with Westlake Village Center for Spiritual Living. And today I want to talk about our theme. You have a theme for the month, and we'll get to that a little bit. Tomorrow is what I want to talk about initially. Tomorrow's Labor Day, in case you didn't know. In case you didn't notice, on Saturday it was a little bit easier to drive around. A little bit easier, which is a wonderful thing, especially if you live in town like I do. So anyway, tomorrow we'll celebrate Labor Day, and I wanted to get a little bit into Labor Day. Labor Day is a creation of the labor movement dedicated to the social and economic achievements of the American workers. It constitutes a yearly national tribute. I got this off the internet, that's why it doesn't sound conversational. National tribute to the contributions workers have made to the strength, prosperity, and well-being of our country. It has been celebrated, yes, right on, applaud. And you are all, obviously, workers, whether you work at a business or not. It's been celebrated for more than 110 years, and it, of course, is a federal national holiday where people do not labor. So tomorrow, do not labor. Unless, of course, you work in a restaurant, at Macy's or Walmart, then you will be laboring. It's also a day to take comfort in the knowledge that the pressure to have fun this summer is over. You can go back to your tense lives. Your bikini and Speedo diet, that's over. As of tomorrow, you're good. No more diets till like January 2nd. Then you can go back on some sort of diet if you want to. The kids are going back to school in a couple of days, which is probably a wonderful thing for some of you. And it also helps to get to the movies in the afternoon if you are available to go to a movie in the afternoon, because there's less kids there now. There's other statistics. I turned my phone on a few days ago and I asked Siri. Does anybody ask Siri stuff? Yeah. I asked Siri if she knew how many babies were born on Labor Day. Kind of went through my mind. How many babies were born on Labor Day? And Siri said, Jay. Isn't that weird? Have you ever noticed that Siri can learn your name if you use it often enough? And she sometimes, it sounds like she's like my mother. Jay, to get here takes this time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I asked Siri about how many babies were born on Labor Day, and she said, all of them. It's also the last day to wear white, so you got to put those white pants away on Tuesday. I almost wore white pants too, but didn't go with the upper part. It's also a time of change. Many of the things I spoke about or joked about is a time of change for people. When the kids go back to school, when the summer plans are over, the vacation for many people have concluded, your holidays. It's the last third of the year. And like the theme of the month, it's a time of transformation. Now, I was given this quote. It's more of a passage than a quote for me to think about when I'm putting together this talk. And I want to read to you exactly what I had to read and think about and use to come up with what I am speaking about today. It was written by Friar Richard Rohr. Didn't know there were friars anymore. I thought that went out with Romeo and Juliet. But Friar Richard Rohr, he has a website called the Center for Action and Contemplation. I believe it's actually an office, a place of worship probably in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And he writes a blog. And the blog that week, because I found the quote, was from the week he called Embracing the Shadow. And he called that day's meditation, that day's blog, Living on the Edge. And this is what he said. As we explored in last week's meditations, liminal space, from the Latin limen, for threshold, is an inner state and sometimes an outer situation where we can begin to think and act in genuinely new ways. It is when we are betwixt and between, having left one room or stage of life, but not yet entered the next. We often enter liminal space when our former way of being is challenged or changed. Perhaps when we lose a job or a loved one during illness, engagement or at a birth of a child. During this graced time, we are not certain or in control. This openness allows room for something genuinely new to happen. We are empty and receptive, an erased tablet waiting for new words. Liminal space is where we are most teachable. Sounds kind of exciting, sounds a little scary, that liminal space-time, but it is a time of transformation. In literary terms, it is that in-between place between the murder of Bruce Wayne's parents and when he becomes Batman. Okay, that wasn't clear enough. It's when it's during Luke Skywalker's apprenticeship in the swamps of Dagobah. Oh, good, a few. Okay, I'm not the only geek here. Here's one. Everyone's read this. In Pride and Prejudice, this might work better for some people. In Pride and Prejudice, between Elizabeth Bennet's realization that she likes Mr. Darcy and the decision to marry him. Okay? That is a time of liminal space. That is that in-between time where you learn something new. where you transform, and sometimes radically. In these examples, there were radical changes, and you adopt and you reveal your true self, you reorganize your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, and thus your actions and experiences. Now, sometimes it's because, like in the example from the passage I read, there are rites of passage. So you go off to college. I remember that was a big deal for me because I went off for college. I went to out of state and knew absolutely no one where I went. And at, 18 years old, that was exciting to me. I remember when I was a junior, almost a senior in high school, my dad said to me, well, let's make a decision here. If you decide to go to a college in state, I'll buy you a brand new car. Or you can go out of state, which is going to cost a little more money. And I said, see ya. Because I wanted that excitement of a new place where I didn't know anybody, where there was this huge transformation. So for me, that rite of passage was a huge time for that liminal space to happen. Or when you get fired or laid off, or when rites of passage happen, when you have a bar mitzvah. I'm sure there's a few here. I had one just about a year ago. I moved in with my girlfriend, my significant other, and I'm sure most of you have gone through this in one way or another. You know, all my stuff now and all her stuff. So what goes, what stays, what gets thrown away, what goes to storage, what pictures go up, what pictures will never ever be on the wall, most of them mine. And of course the big one, closet space, which I lost completely on that one. And some are daunting challenges that we go through, destructive things that happen in our lives sometimes, chaos that shows up in our lives, and we feel like we have to start over, or our heart gets broken. We come up to that moment where we go, now what? This and this and this and whatever happened, now what? We feel like life is making you go, as my talk title says, backwards in heels, which is extra difficult for most men. So who's felt that way? Say aye. Aye. Yeah, of course, one way or another. Now, sometimes we do it with a lot of labor and toil, and sometimes we do it with the ease and grace and beauty and talent of Ginger Rogers. And let me take a moment to talk about this talk title and where I got it. Some of you have probably heard this phrase or a version of this phrase, and there's all kinds of stories about where this phrase comes from, but the actual truth is that in 1982, which I found very strange, I thought this was maybe something from the 50s or the 40s. In 1982, a gentleman named Robert Thaves, who is a cartoonist and has, and I believe still has, a weekly cartoon called Frank and Ernest in newspapers, for anybody who reads a newspaper anymore. And in it he says, or the character said, sure, he was great, speaking of Fred Astaire, sure, he was great, but don't forget that Ginger Rogers did everything he did backwards and in high heels. That's where that comes from. So sometimes we feel like in life we're going backwards and in high heels instead of forwards and in grace and ease and smiling. There's a story I read about a man who faced so many liminal spaces and liminal moments in his life. He once wrote, at the age of 32, I am now the most miserable man living. If what I feel were equally distributed to the whole human family, there would not be one cheerful face on the earth. Whether I shall, he wrote this to a friend, by the way, whether I shall ever be better, I cannot tell. I awfully forebode I shall not. To remain as I am is impossible. I must die or be better it appears to me. Now, he had many experiences that were positive in his life. But I want to concentrate in this story on what Rohr said. We often enter liminal space when our former way of being is challenged or changed. And this gentleman went through lots of challenges and changes in his life. And I'm going to read a few of them. At 7 years old, his family was evicted and he had to go to work. At 9 years old, his mother died. At 19, his sister died. Then he went and entered the military. There was a war at that time. And he entered as a captain, you know, as an officer. But by the time he got out, a short time later, he was a private. At 22, he had a business that failed. At 23, he ran for the state legislature in his state and lost. And not only that year, he lost the job that he took after his business failed, and he wanted to go to law school, and he got declined. This guy's only 24 now, and he borrows money from a friend to start a new business. Boom, failed. Not only did his business fail, he had to declare bankruptcy. At 26, his fiancée died. At 27, big surprise, he had a nervous breakdown. He was bedridden for 6 months. Now, a good thing happened during that time. He had been elected to a state legislature, and then he was trying to go for the speakership of his state legislature, and he lost that. Then we move on to his 31st year, and he lost another state election. So then he thought by the time he was 34, well, heck, this isn't doing so well in my state. I'll go for Congress of the United States, and he lost that run. By 39, he had won a seat in Congress. Kept pushing and pushing, and he finally won a seat in Congress, but he lost re-election. Then at 40, he thought, well, I better go back to the state. And he ran for the land officer, whatever that was in that state, and he lost that. At 41, his son died. At 45, he lost the Senate race again. At 47, he decided, hey, I'm going to run for vice president. So he went to the convention, et cetera, and he got 100 votes and lost. Nobody wanted him for vice president. At 49 again, this guy's trying so hard. At 49, he lost his bid for Senate of the United States once again. Whew. I don't know about you guys, that's a tough one to not give up. But then finally, at the age of 51, he became the president of the United States. She knows who I'm talking about. And a quote he made was, most people are as happy as they decide to be. Most people are as happy as they decide to be. This guy kept pushing forward and forward. He finally became the president of the United States. And yes, he wasn't president for very long. And yes, he made a tragic death and probably should never have gone to the theater, but that man was Abraham Lincoln. Yeah. Lost and lost and lost and kept going forward and forward. Probably felt many times, although they didn't understand this phrase, that he was going backwards in heels. But he persevered in this liminal space. He transformed himself. And transformation is about decision. Do you want to decide to stay in the dark like Lincoln could have with a life like that? You want to stay in the circumstance? Do you want to stay in what's happening here? The facts? Oh my God, that scary word, the facts. Or do you want to step into the light? I want to go back to Friar Rohr again, Friar Richard. During this grace time, we are not certain or in control. This openness allows room for something genuinely new to happen. We are empty and receptive, an erased tablet waiting for new words. Liminal space is where we are most teachable. So we get to decide in these times when suddenly you're in a family of empty nest. Some of you parents probably have been there. I know when my parents experienced the empty nest, I'm the youngest child and the only boy, so guess what that meant. Spoiled. When I went off to college and it was an empty nest at my house, I know my parents looked at each other after all these years of bringing up 3 children and went, "Who the heck are you?" Because they forgot in the whirly life of bringing up children and going on vacations and working and keeping a household, et cetera, that, oh, I have a relationship with this person, not just a deal to bring up children and keep a household up. So all of a sudden, they had to renew their relationship. Wow, what a transformation that was for them. And for anyone else who might go through the empty nest, or loss of life, or loss of job, or like I said, leaving home, any kind of illness, or anything that puts us off balance. Winning the lottery. Now that's a cool thing. Wouldn't that be a cool thing? And some of you maybe have won the lottery. If you win a whole hunk of money, boy, is that going to change your life. And have you ever seen the statistics of how many people keep that money? Most people blow it and end up with the little that they have. Now that's because of their lack of consciousness, yes, but that's a different talk. So do you want to focus on the labor and toil that you think you must face in order to transform in this liminal space, in these times that I'm talking about? Or do you want to sit in the truth? That's a decision. That's a big decision that each of us have to make in these times. We think we have to fix the outside to move forward. You know what I mean? I was talking about the facts. We always think we have to fix these facts. And yeah, some of them have to have attention given to. But we have to also remember that the facts are something that already occurred. They're from your beliefs of the past. So now you get to decide, do I want to keep these beliefs that keep bringing me to these kind of facts, especially the ones you no longer want in your life? And a lot of times when these happen, we sit in resistance. We don't realize by going on and on about especially negative things or things that seem to be negative, that by going on and on about it, worrying about it, gives it power. Our resistance to it gives it power, this whatever the yuckiness that showed up. And we have to remember that we don't want to step into the resistance. Yeah, be sad, be disappointed, be downright angry, be annoyed, whatever it is that these facts may make you feel, because you don't want to hide your feelings, you don't want to push them down, you want to go through them so you can allow the transformation. But then, take action inward. Decide, do I want to experience? Now I'm talking about whether it's something huge that's bringing you into this transformation or something not so big, not so overwhelming. Decide, do I want to experience a woe is me life or a wow is me life? It's time to decide, do I want to take it the hard way and labor and toil and try to figure everything out and let it just sit on my shoulders? Or do I want to do it the natural way, the organic way, the factory settings way? You understand what I mean by that? The factory settings way. We need to, and this includes me, decide, like Ralph Waldo Emerson when he said, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. So who are you? Is a big question here. Who are you? there's a story about a caterpillar. And the caterpillar's, walking along on the 4,000 feet he has, or she has, and hits a wall. Like, oh, well, now what do I do? Nobody's around to help me, and holy cow, look at that. So this caterpillar has to decide, now what am I going to do? And he's thinking, and he's, going through strategies, and he thinks, well, maybe I could just, like a Delta Force warrior, jump up, climb up, just go through, use all my strength and strength I don't think I have, and climb up that sucker. Or I could sit patiently and know the truth about myself. And that's what he did. He decided, no, I don't need to go through this heartache, this toil, this labor, this trouble. I'm going to just sit here and know who I am. And you know what happened? In 2 weeks, he just flew over that wall. You're going to get through this liminal space. So we have to decide, and decision, The Power of Decision, a fabulous book and or class. If either shows up in your life, please take that. Raymond Charles Barker. Decision is your biggest gift. So are you going to decide when you're in this liminal space to move forward with ego? I'm going to tell you two egos. The little ego, which is edging God out, or the big capital letter ego, which is entertaining God only. The trick is, when you're in this liminal space, this grace time that Rohr talks about, the most teachable moment, that is when we have to remember who we are. When we have to stop and listen. When we have to stop working on the solution to the problem, fixing it. The how do I do this? How is none of your business. Whose business is how? It's the universe's business. We have to commit to the what. Now, what I mean by the what is the same thing I mean by the who. Not the group, the who. Who are you? What are you? It's the same. The answer is the same to both of those questions. So what I'm asking each of you to do in these times, whether they're super negative, chaotic, take you out of everything you know, or not quite so laborious, is get back to basics. Estelle Frankel is a Berkeley psychotherapist and a teacher of Jewish mysticism. And she said this: if I take the time to sit down, close my eyes, say a prayer, open myself to spirit, then my identity begins to expand. And I remember that I'm not just Estelle, the personality, that I am a soul, that I am an embodiment of the divine. And I move from what Jewish mystics say is small mind, little ego, to big mind, big ego. And also the Buddhists say this. And in that other state, the bonds of the self, the small identity that limits us and dictates who we think we are, it all frees up. It's sort of like a zooming out that you would do with a camera, but it's zooming out all the way to infinity, all the way to eternity, beyond time, beyond space. And that moment of deep meditation or prayer, anything is possible. because you are rising above the workings of time. You're allowing yourself to emerge. Now, is that a new you? Maybe, possibly. But this new you is actually coming through from the oldest of you, the divine you. It's a vibration that we reattach ourselves to, an energy that's always there to tap into. I'm sure you've probably all heard this. Dr. Holmes used to begin his radio shows and his very brief television show with these words: there's a power for good in the universe greater than you are, and you get to use it. And you are using it right here, right now. You used it yesterday, you used it to get here, and you're going to use it tomorrow whether you work or not. And the power is in you. The power is you. The power is love. Now, Mother Teresa said, and you know, today she became a saint according to the Catholic faith. What the Catholics didn't know was that she was a saint already, but that's okay. Everybody has to go through their organization. It's sort of like my ordination. They didn't know until February, and I sat in front of 3 ordained ministers, and they grilled me for an hour or two that I was an ordained minister, even though I already knew that. They had to catch up. So now the Catholic Church has caught up with their rules and regulations to Mother Teresa, and she said, do ordinary things with extraordinary love. And love, that's what God is. God is that experience of love. God is that oneness that is love. These are the first steps in these moments, in this liminal space, in this time of transformation. We got to move any story of woe, whatever level this woe is, of chaos, indecision, loss of control, being off balance, feeling like we're going backwards in heels. In those moments when we say to ourselves, what the hell am I doing? What the heck how did I get here? What now? To the state of wow, where in the Signs of Mind you will find there says, that is there's a living presence within. I recognize it as the one and only power in the universe, and I unify with it. You are it. You are that I am that I am. Did you know John talked about this earlier, spiritual mind treatment. Spiritual mind treatment is the main tool in this philosophy to move forward, to bring into our lives the experiences we desire, we require, correct? Yes. Did you know that the first 2, maybe just even the first of the 5 steps, are the most important ones? Most people think that middle step, and I'll explain in case you don't know, there are 5 steps to spiritual mind treatment real quickly. And in the 3rd step is when you declare what it is you want. You declare your health. You declare your parking space. You declare a new romantic life. You declare a better job. Whatever it is you want to declare, peace of mind. But the first 2 steps is when we recognize that there's one power in this universe. There's one mind in this universe. And there's nothing bigger or better than that. And the 2nd step is unifying with that and knowing that that power is within me right here, right now. Nobody could ever take it away. No government, no religion, no person can ever take that away. We may forget it now and then, but it can't be taken away. Those first 2 steps are the most important of any of them, even more important than gratitude. And I know how, especially in this philosophy, we love gratitude. And gratitude's fabulous. You know why? Because gratitude, when you say thank you, what's happened? You've already received the good, whatever the good is. You say thank you. So in treatment, when you're at gratitude, you know it's done. Why would you say thank you before it's done? It's done. So stop and listen. Let the universe deal with the hows and the strategies you require. What we want to do is transform by transcending. You understand what I mean by that? We want to transform what's happening in our life. We want to transform into the new you by transcending the facts and returning to who and what we are. We want to allow the new you to emerge from the original you, to reanimate the God in you. And if you don't like the word God, the divine in you. If you don't like the word divine, that love power in you, that intelligence in you. If you're super scientific, the Big Bang in you. It's all the same. I don't care what you call it, and most of all, God doesn't care what you call it. In that liminal space where you are the most teachable, go back to basics. Transform to emerge as who you already are. Is that clear, who you already are? Are we clear on that, who you already are? I know you're in church. You're in your spiritual center. You're reminded here every Sunday, and you've already been reminded before I even stepped up on here, who you are. You are the living Spirit of God. You are a personalization of the power of the universe. You are an individualization of that creative energy that made everything. You are powerful. You are capable.